Hey there everybody, it's Mark Curley. I'm back with another how to draw video. You know, a couple of years back I did one on how to draw a dog. More than a couple of years ago, I think it was. And I want to come back and do another one because there's so many breeds of dogs, all of them looking, radically different from one another. And today we're going to be doing a fun one. I'm going to be showing you how to draw a French bulldog. Now, I've put in a box to begin with, as I so often do. It's about 5 inches on all sides. That works out to, what is that, a little bit under 13 centimeters in the metric measurements there. And then I just put a cross right down the middle to find the center. This helps you figure out the sort of size, those who want to work at the same size I do. And also it helps with the line placements. But let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so here you see the basic shape of the head. Just do your best to get this in the same location. Note that this horizontal line for the top of the head is about 1/3 of the way from here to there in relation to this horizontal line here. See if you can get this little notch in here. This is going to be corresponding with the eyes as the head is turning in a 3/4 point of view. Don't worry too much about this. To be honest, a lot of this gets erased later on. I'm just trying to get you started with something to build off of. And now it's time to draw the wonderfully gigantic ears. All right, so you can see they're almost like bunny ears, aren't they? As the owner of a corgi, I can tell you there's nothing quite so cute as dogs with gigantic, oversized ears. But this one, you can see, does not quite reach that top line, and it reconnects just a little over to one side of the top of the head. This one does actually touch right very neatly on the top of line of our box here and sort of reconnects basically where that line crosses over in the middle. Now I think it's time to get in the basic guidelines for the eyes. Okay, among the more distinctive aspects of drawing this dog is the width, the distance between the two eyes. They really are quite widely separated, and this little crosshair here can help you with the placement of getting that eye. This one very, very close to the edge here as the head turns into the 3/4 point of view. You can see a little bit of the white of the eye in this eye, not so much this one, just because of the angle that we're viewing the head from. Now I'm going to draw some basic shapes down here for the area of the mouth. All right, so you see it's a roughly triangular shape here with the top of it being pretty much neatly between the two eyes in terms of how high it is. And then these, I think they're called jowls, maybe that's what they look like. These fleshy areas come down on either side of the lower jaw, kind of like concealing the rest of the lower jaw, which comes up here, and then you can see just a bit of the lower lip here when we get to that. I'll go ahead and maybe draw a touch of it right now. You're going to see just a little bit of the lower lip here, but this jaw is actually kind of partially concealed by the fleshy area on either side. We're going to draw just a basic shape for the nose, and then we're going to stop it with all this time lapse, and we're going to get into some real-time drawing. All right, so you can see the shape of the nose, and I think it really is quite unusual compared to different animals that I've drawn. It's like a mushroom almost, this shape. And we're going to be refining this with lines for the nostrils and so forth later on. But you can see I also added a line here for the back of the neck, which comes up quite high, almost reaching to that same point of the base of the ear. Another line over there, and we've pretty much got everything we need now to start doing the more refined, detailed line work. Before I do that, though, I'm going to erase all of these initial guidelines so that they don't get in the way as we make progress on this drawing. Okay, so I'm going to begin by sort of altering the shape of the ear here. This basic guideline shape that I gave you is a good start, but the truth is the real shape of the French Bulldog's ear is a little more interesting than that. It is quite evenly curved on the top side, but as you come down here, there is this sort of secondary section that bulges out from that initial shape that we drew, and then a little bit of a sort of angled section right here that reconnects with the head. And you're going to have a similar thing happening over here. You can't really see it quite so clearly because of the angle of how we've placed the head here. but there's going to be considerably more detail in this area. I'm just putting in some basic guidelines. It's mostly just where the fur is coming out and creating a kind of, the cavity or the area where the actual ear, going into the head where the eardrum and so forth would be. And there's even a kind of an interesting sort of fold that happens over here. I'll just say right now that I am indebted to someone I follow on Instagram named Kate Lafar. I hope I'm pronouncing her name properly, but she is the proud owner of a French Bulldog, and I have long admired the photos that she takes of her dog named Micah, and so I asked her if I could use some of her photos as reference to teach myself how to draw a French Bulldog, and then bring that to you guys by way of a video and show you what I learned. We're going to have to really sort of relegate most of the ear to the shading process later on. But one thing that's interesting to me is that in some dog breeds you'll see the upper edge of the ear a lot. Not so much with the French Bulldog. You're seeing like the interior of the ear, at least in this sort of a pose, and very little of that upper edge that curves around, you would see from behind, I suppose. But now let's go ahead and continue with the eyes. And the one of the things that really makes a French Bulldog adorable is this distinctive look that you see with the eyes. To me, it looks like eyebrows almost, and this almost kind of apologetic looking shape to the eyebrows. They're just very expressive dogs, and I can certainly see how people fall in love with them. The face is just so distinctive, but you can see me creating this shape here that has a number of angles to it, and in particular there's like a fold here that as this sort of eyebrow-like area folds in on the head. You'll get a nice dark line there, and a very similar thing is going to happen over here. With this eye, and you're sort of seeing it from a different angle, but it creates a fairly similar shape. As I said, to me it sort of reads as like an apologetic eyebrow as it curves up towards the middle of the head. Of course, eyebrows, I've always said, are a huge part of facial expressions, and maybe that's why this dog in particular comes across as so expressive, because it's got these highly refined eyebrows. So I'm adding a sort of a curving line underneath here, and this whole area by way of shading we're going to find is considerably darker. I'm going to be darkening this in later on, but we're really just sort of getting the basic shapes in place right now. And I'll maybe do a hint of a line here to indicate the, as I said, this sort of darker region that surrounds both of the eyes, basically. Now let's start refining the nose. Quite an interesting shape, as I said, and the nostrils, which are very pronounced and dark, come in like so, and they are angled, these two sort of angled lines. As I said, I've drawn a lot of animals and seen a lot of similarity between the various nose shapes, but I do believe that the French Bulldog has quite an unusual nose shape, and I saw lines extending beyond either just a fold. I don't know if it's actually part of the nostril itself. Maybe you French Bulldog experts can weigh in on that. But this line that comes down the middle continues straight down to the middle of the upper lip. And that's where we're going to get this cute little lower lip that sort of almost looks like a pout, it seems to me, in human terms, because it comes right up there, and as I said before, is surrounded by these fleshy areas. Now I'm going to refine the fleshy area a little bit, splitting it into two areas. This sort of fold here that comes down starts way up near the forehead and comes all the way down here. This area is maybe not so cleanly split between black and white as I had originally in there, but it's sort of a good way to get you started. And over here we're going to refine this shape so that it sort of comes in a little bit and then comes back out. And this maybe, yeah, all of this was maybe just a little oversimplified as a basic guideline. We can go ahead and refine it a little more now. This whole area in here is a bit of a lie, I have to admit, because you don't really see that kind of a head shape from this angle. And what we probably ought to do is just reduce that. I'm erasing it away, and then we may see a little bit of a darker area right here, but this whole area right here should maybe just remain the white of the page to some degree. And I'm going to continue this line down around as it heads down to this fleshy area of the neck where, you know, that's not going to be a central focus of this video, but there are loads of folds to the flesh, and that's one of these things that makes the French Bulldog really distinctive, is the folds that occur below the chin. And there you go. That gives us, I think, the basic line work that we need to get started. Now, up here in this area, you might get one little pinched in little fold between the two areas of the eyes. As I said, the face looks so expressive up here because you get these little hints of extra folds in here, and I do think that this is part of the reason that we relate so much to dogs, is the eyes can look surprisingly human a lot of the time. And I'm going to also add to this eye shape and maybe have it get curving up a little instead of just being round. How about if we get this sort of curving up and adding to that slightly cute, pouty, apologetic look that I'm going for. Now give me a moment. I'm going to sharpen my pencil and we're going to come back here and start to get into the shading. Alright, so unfortunately I'm not going to be able to do this quite so step by step, line by line as we go along and get further into the details. But what I want to show you is sort of the basics of where are the darker areas. At least for this breed of Kate's French Bulldog, there's a darkened area along the edge of the ears. And so you're going to see me later on especially darkening in that edge quite a bit. But the real darkened area is here around the eyes, and that's where I'm just getting some, you know, preliminary shading in place to help you kind of see how the head, the face, splits into these lighter and darker regions. And just sort of where you should begin to think about the shading, where it mostly is going to be. To me, it almost reminds me a little bit of like clown makeup. I shouldn't say that because people think that clowns are creepy. But certainly you see various theatrical people painting, you know, shapes around their eyes and so forth in different traditions, and the French Bulldog seems almost permanently to have that kind of painted face look, you know. Now what you've got above here to kind of help you understand the structure, this is like an extra fold above the nose, and that's another thing that makes the French Bulldog different from a lot of other animals I've seen. Usually there's just kind of like a uniform, what I call the snouted region area, but there's a whole secondary fold above the nose there that you see with these dogs. Now this whole area here, I'm going to just go ahead and add a bunch of shading to show you how it sort of divides from the rest of the face and becomes this darker area. Consider this temporary shading. It's not nearly you know, refined or careful enough to be the final thing from my point of view, but this is sort of help you get the basic idea that this whole area in here is going to be much darker than the rest of the head. And I think just because of the lighting situation, the areas down here, it may be a combination of the lighting situation where the light wouldn't reach down here, and also the physical tinting of the flesh, but down here it gets very dark indeed, and I'm sort of trying to do this quickly. But there is a secondary fold here that I probably should have indicated earlier that happens at this edge here. So many interesting little folds, and that's part of the reason that I wanted to do this, is I just thought, boy, all those wrinkles and so forth are going to be a lot of fun to figure out and to teach. This area we can go ahead and get quite dark. As I said, a combination of the light is unable to reach down there, and also I think it is just physically a little darker the lower down you go. The nose itself, and yet another distinctive trait, I think the nose itself is not all that dark, which is very different from most animals. The nose is where the darkness really tends to be. And I shouldn't act as if I'm an expert, because these sort of things could come down to the specifics of Kate's dog. And not be something that I should generalize about in terms of like all French bulldogs look like this. I cannot say that with great authority. But anyway, you see me darkening a little bit outside of the area of the nose, which I do think is quite unusual compared to most animals. And I think after that, we should maybe just sort of mention a little bit about the direction and the length of the fur. I'm going to just start putting in tiny little lines here, because that's certainly a distinctive thing about French bulldogs, maybe bulldogs in general. This is one of these short-haired breeds where almost none of the hairs on the head, at least, are growing to any length beyond just almost bristly little short hairs. But that doesn't mean that you can ignore the direction of the lines. You just have to still sort of think about the direction of each one of your lines that is representing fur. And general, it's sort of like I always said, sort of like you're looking at the face of a clock or something, and the lines are pointing up as you go to the top of the head, and then generally starting to head over to more of a horizontal direction. And you really can't go wrong if you just keep following that idea of like the face of a clock, and the hair is increasingly pointing down as you get to these lower areas. Now, I got to say that the dog does look a little spooky with these blank eyes, so let's go ahead and get into that. And I was looking at a variety of photos and trying to determine if there was actually a pupil, like a very dark defined pupil in the center of the eye, and I don't think there is. There's a sort of a darker area, and then right around the edge is also a sort of banding, just like you see in the human eye. And then I'm going to just put a little bit of shade all through here, and I think this might be one of these ones where I have to pull out my beloved white gouache at the end to throw on a bunch of highlights as like the finishing touch here to make the eye look sort of sparkly and shiny. But you'll notice that I'm not doing a highly defined pupil here. I'm just making it get deeper and richer and darker in the middle, but not putting any hard line around that area. And all of this is really going to get much more refined as we go, but I wanted to just sort of give you the basics in real time, give you some guidelines, talk you through it prior to going into a really big, long time-lapse-palooza in which I refine all of these areas and give them that finished polish that I want this drawing to have. So, sorry that I can't do that all line by line, step by step. We would be here all day. I'm probably about to put another hour, something like that, into this drawing, but you will see it as something like 20 or 30 seconds, because we're going to do it all in time lapse. Give me a moment and I will be right back. Okay, well, you can certainly see how important it is to get hold of a black colored pencil. The contrast between this front part, the mouth area, the nose area, and the rest of the face is, it really helps a lot. If you can go to jet black with some sort of black colored pencil, you know me, I love my little two pencil method. But another thing that is going to make a very big difference in this one is my beloved white gouache, because I'm going to use this opaque white paint to add some highlights to the eyes, and that, as you will see, is going to make a very big difference in terms of making them look shiny. So if you don't have any white gouache, I would say, why not go out and get yourself some. It's not super expensive. I suppose if you go for the top of the line stuff, it could set you back a bunch, but I find that, you know, these little finishing touches for a shiny surface like this, and even like along the edge of the eye, if I can drop in just a little bit of a shine there, right? That can really go a long way towards adding to that glassy kind of liquidy look that eyes get. Give me a moment in time lapse. I'm going to add a few more highlights, and then we will be back with a few final words. Alright, well there you go. There is my video on how to draw a French Bulldog. I really hope you enjoyed it, and keep in mind that this is part of a whole long playlist of videos about how to draw different kinds of animals. I'll make a link in my description to that playlist so you can check them all out one at a time. Many thanks to those of you who watch those vids, and of course thank you to anyone who supports me by getting any of my books, like the Two Pencil Method, which is what you saw here today. Whole chapter of this book is devoted to animals. Mastering Manga, my series on drawing in the manga style, Mastering Manga 1, 2, and 3, and coming out in the next few days, The Comic Book Lesson, the graphic novel that shows you how to make comics. July 26th. 2022, it will be in the stores. So very grateful to anyone who supports me by getting any of those books, but I think it's time for me to lay down this pencil. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back with another one real soon.